In this video, we're going to learn how to use the crease set modifier to maintain the volume of our object. All right, so with the drone, we've gone ahead and we've added some of the details. We've started smoothing things out, but looking at it, there's a lot of details that are very mushy. And what I mean by that is it's smoothing too much. I want to harden up some of the edges and create some nice little creases. So to do that, we're going to use the crease set modifier. Now we've already added this, and we did this in the first lesson of the module. And with this, I'm going to go to edge mode. And this is going to bring up this yellow cage. And what this is going to allow me to do is come in and select edges that I want to crease. And it's going to allow me to store those edges in what's called a crease set. So with this, let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit and double click on the edges that were the details that we created all the way through that manufactured seam. Now with this, whenever working with creases and trying to select edges, it can be a little difficult. So what I do is I tend to turn on this ignore back facing and then allow it to work that way. And so I'm going to double click on that edge, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to hold down Control, double click on this one, and then this one. And that should go all the way through. Now, at the back, it might miss this edge back here. So if you hit F3, and that might get a little confusing, but look right here where the edge stops. Hold down Control, select that edge, and then I'm just going to follow that to the other side. Control, select that edge. Okay, there we go. So now we have that entire loop selected, and I can now add this to a crease set. So let's create a crease set. You'll see that it's named edge set, and if I right click on that, I can rename it, and I can call this drone underscore main underscore seam. And that will let me know what these edges actually are. And then I'm going to type in a value. Let's do 0.2 and hit enter. And what you'll notice is that those edges creased up, and it's very sharp detail now. So go ahead and take a look at that. See how that looks there? Let's go ahead and drop it down to 0.1 so you can see the difference. See how those edges now are spread apart a little bit. Now, values with this, typically I like to stick between 0.2 and 0.3 with particularly hard edges. 0.3 is the highest that I'll go because you'll see it starts to add a really weird shading to this. Now, this has also contributed to the iterations that we have set in our open subdiv. So if I were to bump this up to 4, it would try to smooth that out a little bit more. But as you can see here, it's taking just a little bit of time. And as we start adding more and more iterations, that can start to tax the performance of our computer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it down to 3. Let's go to edge or crease set, and let's go ahead and do something like 0.2. Typically, if you use the guideline of however many iterations you have in open subdiv, so let's say we have 3 iterations, the max that I'll go is 1 below that, so 0.2. Okay. So looking at the smoothing of that, that feels really good. Now let's go ahead and select the edges all the way around the mesh here for this seam. So double click on this one, Control click on that one, and hold down Control, double click. Now if you notice that it didn't select that edge and it selected a different one, just be mindful of it. And what you want to do is just kind of back up, so hit undo a couple of times, because we really don't want to add any edges that don't belong. Now if you do add edges, it's not a big deal. You just need to select the edges you don't want and remove those from an edge set. I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. So with all of these now selected, after this one of course, oops, now I noticed there that I selected an edge. Okay, so you can kind of see what that looks like. Okay, there we go. Now with this, let's go ahead and add a new crease set. So we'll create a new one, and we can right click and rename it. We can call this drone underscore main underscore leg seams. Okay, and then we'll drop in a value of 0.2 on that one. Okay, hardens that up nice and neat. And then on this one, let's go all the way at the bottom of these. We could take all of these and add those to that crease set that we just created. To do that, we'll right click on that crease set that we want to add it to, and then simply hit add selection to set. Now what it's going to do is it's going to apply the value and store those edges into that crease set. So now we have something like this. Now just underneath that, I've got these edges, okay, right here. If you need to, go ahead and turn off that open subdiv. This might make it a little bit easier to select. And you can see I selected the wrong edge there. Okay, so now with all of those, let's go ahead and add them to that crease set. So add selection to set. Take a look at it with the open subdiv. And just kind of looking at the smoothness of that, that feels pretty good. I might want to go just a little bit lighter, maybe. So if I wanted to, I could keep those selected, or I could right click and subtract them from that selection and then add them to a different one. So I've created a set. Let me go ahead and right click and rename this to something like drone underscore legs underscore crease. Okay, or just call it underscore legs. And then I'll add 0.15 to that value. You'll notice that it creases that up. So either way will work just fine. Now, typically what I do is I tend to store these by value. And so I don't select a new set and then try creasing it that way. I'll come in and I'll just start to add them to existing ones that I feel like, 0.5 or 0.15 will be good, or maybe even whatever it might be, and then add it to that set. And let me turn off the open subdiv. That's what I wanted, just to make it easier to select. Okay, now once we have that selected, I can come in and let's select the rest of these. And these can get a little difficult because it is in a very tight space. Another way that you can zoom in and out incrementally is to hold down Control-Alt and then your drag with your middle mouse button. So press that down, and that might help things. As you can see here, I'm having a hard time trying to figure out where these edges are and trying to get all of them selected. Okay, and that can be kind of difficult. So I'm going to add those to a crease set, and we'll do 0.15 on those. And I need to get the other side. I'm going to go ahead and wait on that because it is just taking too long to select those. We could try to select an edge here. So if I selected this one and then hit select, that's going to select all of those edges. That's not really what I want. I could select this and then hit loop. Okay, and then we could just do that. And loop again. So that way all I have to do is just select one of them. And there we go. So I've looped that there. And then we can add that. So right click and add to the selection. And with this, you can get creative with how you start to make these selections. Okay, that feels good. Right click and add selection. And then turn on the open subdiv just to kind of see how that's working there. Notice how it rounds it out. We left the cushion, the rubber piece on the bottom, to where it's nice and round. That feels pretty good. And I like the way the shape is just coming out on that. So now we've got all these details, but now I need to work on the rim of this piece. So double click on that edge, and then double click on this one, and then even this one. Okay, now I'm not going to go all the way through, even on the top and the bottom there. I'm just going to select these and add those to a new edge set. And let's do 0.15. Okay, see how it hardens that up, gives us a nice little value there. I could maybe add this to that selection, and I would go all the way around for it. So right click, add selection to set. And that feels pretty good. I like the way that feels. So I'm going to do that for the rest of these. Oops, make sure we get the right edge. For some reason, ignore backfacing is not working. Not sure why. Okay. And let's go all the way around on this one. And then on this one, I'll just right click and add it to that selection. Okay, let's do this all the way around. And then we'll be able to move on to our next object. Start working on it. Now on the drone, we do have one more detail that we need to add on the front. It's kind of like this little USB port that I would want to add to that. And so we'll talk about how to take that geometry and add that detail in, what would be the best course of action to do that, and how do we do it without just really messing up the smoothing of the mesh and the integrity of the topology. So with that, let's right click, add selection. And whoops, it looks like right here I didn't add the correct. Let me get that one more time. Let's right click, add selection. There we go. So now that's right, and everything's looking really good at this point. So I'm really happy with that. You could also come in and you could add these loops here. Remember those that we created? Let's go ahead and isolate this selection just so we can see that. And then I can come in and I can add those maybe to that selection as well. And you know what? I'm actually going to add them to a separate crease set. So I'm just going to hit Control Z, and then I'm going to do 0.2 on that one. All right, so that feels pretty good. Got that nice little rim there. Happy with that. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and turn on or turn off isolation mode. And now we've creased this up pretty well, and I'm really happy with the smooth result. The light pieces here on the bottom, I'm going to leave them just the way that they are. There was enough topology there to just hold its shape, and it's exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to leave that alone. All right, so let's move on into our next video where we're going to talk about creating that little USB port on the drone, and we're going to talk about how to add that in while keeping the integrity. So we're going to do a little bit of problem solving here, and we'll come up with some solutions for some of the smoothing issues that will arise.